Cool. Hello. I hope you like my Naruto shirt. I recently got it. Today we're going to be drawing a dog climbing up a cliff with swords, carrying a puppy in its backpack. We're going to be doing two versions. This is going to be pretty exciting. Totally forgot to introduce myself. I'm Pierce, by the way. I go by Ekpap on the internet, thus the channel name. I do art and field notes videos, and that's pretty much it. But I thank you for joining me. Feel free to take out a sketchbook and sketch along with me as I paint. And yeah, let's do it. Alright, I'm going to get started by showing you some of my ideation and sketches for this project. I started out with like a mind map of some ideas and then had like a few different thumbnail sketches of things I could do. I ended up choosing this cliff one, then wrote down the details of like what I would need to plan, and I went ahead and planned it. Planned out this cool dog character who's carrying a puppy in his backpack and has like double swords that he uses to climb up the cliff. I thought it was pretty cool. Also, my Instagram's right there if you want to see some of my art other than this. I start out with a wireframe for the little dog dude and then just fill him in. It's unfortunate because there's a lot more detail in the sketch than the actual painting in the end, which made me sad, but that happens. Paint's kind of hard to get detail. Pencils is such a fine point that it's super easy to get detail. But you can see I spent a solid 20 minutes on this dog sketch, and I was very happy with it. And unfortunately, it did not get the amount of detail it deserved. Also, I do apologize because my head gets in the frame a lot. I didn't even realize it. I was just in the zone sketching, listening to audiobooks, but my head appears a lot, and I'm so sorry. I'll fix it in future videos. I started with the sky blue for the water. I don't have white gouache for this first one, so I'm just using white acrylic paint. You can see the tube on the left. When you mix gouache and acrylic, it makes like a weird snotty-like paint that's kind of hard to paint with. It's not that nice, flat gouache texture. It really is honestly like snot. You can see it become like snot when I add it if you watch me mix the paints. I also start out with such a good shadow like skeleton for these cliffs. Like you can see, like it looks good with the dark like yellowish brown and white, and unfortunately I mess it up later. But up until the point where I start adding like the really weird yellow highlights, which I'll point out, the cliffs look really good. Like right now they still look good in my opinion. One thing I did not do was the atmospheric hazing on these cliffs. That's why it looks kind of just like a giant rock. It's because, well, I didn't desaturate the background and add blue tint to it. But yeah, as you can see, it's looking pretty good. This is where I start to mess up a little bit. I start adding a little bit of highlights. Not yet, actually. Hold on. Wait for it. I'm just outlining the puppy dude. I'm getting in all the details. I thought this was going to be my only one, so I tried really hard on it. But then this is where I mess up. So you can see I'm adding in this white hue, but the yellow tint, I add the yellow highlights, and then these dark gray highlights. It's a mixture of like a warm yellow and then a very cold gray, which does not mix well with the warmish yellowish, darkish cliff, I guess you could call it. It looks okay, but it does not look great. The water here is a minimalistic style. I tried to make it look minimalistic. I ended up really liking it. One thing I didn't add was like white foam caps, which I did add in the other one. And I'm so sorry about my head again. You literally cannot see what I'm painting. Oh my gosh. But I did get a nice minty green paint, and I go back actually and I changed the foreground because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no atmospheric hazing, and I thought I could add it last second, but I'd already painted the cliffs, which is pretty frustrating. Like you can see me going back painting over it now, like, oh, maybe I can fix it, but I really can't. This is where it starts looking more cartoonish than realistic, which is a vibe for some people, including me. but I was trying to go for something that looked a little more realistic, kind of had more I wanted more of a James Gurney feel. I'm not currently at his level though, so cannot paint at that level yet. Maybe in the future. I'm also doing something that I've done in the past that I always forget is kind of useless. I'm inking in the dog before painting him, but the thing is I'm going to be painting over that ink, so there's really no point. I'm just wasting time here, which is kind of stupid. And then I start inking in part of the cliff. I don't know why I did that. I ink it in later, but it just makes it look worse. And this is where I get kind of disappointed because the detail is kind of lost. Like the monotone dark blue kind of gets rid of the zipper-like part. And I try adding all these shades to like make it stand out, but it just does not stand out nearly as much as black ink on white paper. If you have any tips as to how I can make my characters more detailed when painting them with gouache, I would love to know, because I am struggling a little bit with that, and I'm struggling to get the amount of detail and the amount of depth I want in my characters. Like even just shading them, I can do it digitally, but the moment I start doing it in a physical medium, it gets difficult. I also want to note, this entire painting is done in only blues and yellows. It was for a project in school where we had to just choose a certain number of hues we wanted to use. I chose ochre, yellow, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and white and black, of course. So it was a very limited palette, and I think I did pretty good with the limited palette. And now I'm just outlining it with a Copic brush pen, little thicker than I'd like. I added some windmills in the back, as you can see. They turned out pretty nice. But I really wish I added either a thinner ink to the outline or at least like less ink. But this is the finished product of the first one. It's a little too saturated for my taste, but it works. I like it. So right now we finished like the first painting, and as you can see, and probably from the commentary, you realize I did not end up liking it as much as I thought I did. Kind of the idea of you have a perfect idea in your head and the blank piece of paper is a perfect sheet to start it on, but along the way that perfect idea gets muddled and scrambled, and that's pretty much what happened. So now I'm going back to the beginning of the perfect idea in the perfect sheet of paper, and I'm trying again. I am gonna mess up again, unfortunately, and the idea is gonna get muddled again, but as I said at the beginning of this video, that's the nature of me in art. Failure is key to learning. Let's start. So I'm going to start out with the same sketch, same wireframe sketch. I don't put nearly as much detail in the Dogo dude. I just kind of like do a quick outline knowing that it's going to be like not as detailed when I paint it, and I was okay with that. I did make his pose more realistic because in the other one the dude was totally bicepping his way up the top of the mountain. This guy's just relying on his swords a little more by leaning back into it. I start out with a more saturated brown for the cliff, which I changed later, and you'll see I'll bring out my reference photos pretty soon. Here they are. I've been compiling my own reference photos by taking pictures with a 35mm camera, because I think the creative process is a lot more intentional when you go out and take your own reference photos. So here are a few of them. Some of them are not very good pictures, like this next one here, that it's kind of brown. That one's not very good. But one thing to note is it adds a certain level of independence. You don't rely on other people's photos, and I really love that because it makes it my own creative process. So here I'm using this photo from Diablo Lake with the mountains kind of hazy in the background, and I'm going to take that and try and copy it. You see I'm kind of struggling. I'm still using only brown in order to get the mixture I need. Eventually I learned that I have to add blue. I add like the phthalo blue to it. Not a lot, just enough in order to get that blue tint. I'm still struggling here with the brown though. It honestly took me kind of a long time in order to realize, oh, blue, not lighter brown. This is when I figured it out. I start with a sky blue and then add enough brown in order to make it look like a bluish brown. And I start adding it, and it's a very achromatic hue of blue. and even much more so achromatic in the background. As you can see, I paint this, and I add these really cool little towers, and honestly, this is the most exciting part. I just am so happy with the way that the atmospheric hazing turned out. I do make a mistake later though, in that I don't add detail to it because I went off that reference photo, and by not adding detail, I lack a certain amount of depth that the other first draft does have, having the super detailed cliffs. Kind of doing the same with the sky here, getting the lighter blue as I go down to these mountains, mountain tower things. Mountains? Can cliffs be mountains? That's kind of a big brain thought. I think they can if they're tall enough, if they like jut out. Like I know Minecraft mountains, there's like mountain biomes that are right next to the ocean, so maybe. That was a fun tangent. Now back to painting. I'm doing the water here, and I'm trying to get the same sort of atmospheric hazing to the water, but one thing I realized is I have no idea how to do gradient with gouache. It's a little easier with watercolor because you can kind of literally mix it in the water, whereas with gouache being flat, it's a little more like putting down one color and then overlapping it with another color and then putting water on top in order to blend it. I didn't quite figure it out, so I relied upon layering this kind of like lighter like gouache paint on top. Also, you might have just noticed a total color shift in the video. That's because I went from painting it during the day to taking a 5-hour break and then painting it at 7 p.m. when it's dark outside in Washington. That's one thing I really want to learn how to do, is learn how to paint nighttime scenes. I have no idea how to do that. I think that might be a good video for the future, documenting my journey trying to paint a nighttime scene. I hope you're enjoying this video so far, sketching along, watching, eating Cheerios or something. That's something I used to do a lot when I was younger. I'd watch YouTube and eat Cheerios. Back in like 2012 when they had like, what did the fox say and things. That was a long time ago, 2012. I'm doing these clouds. They look a little chunky, not gonna lie. I add some wisps, which make them look a lot better. Wisps are kind of necessary for clouds, I've realized. Chunky clouds, if they're not poofy, they kind of just look like blocks of white and gray. Yeah, not a vibe. I start painting in the front here. This was my least favorite part. Honestly, I put it off because I knew I would have to try and mix a similar brown, and I was struggling so much to mix the similar brown because it had been a while. It had been the 5 hours. Eventually I started doing it, but again, you can see the paint marks where it's darker in some spots and like where I added too much water. This is also a point where I messed up. I made like a really dark green, which didn't look that great. I should have used like a lemon yellow with a phthalo blue, but instead I used an ochre yellow with a phthalo blue, which made it look mediocre at best. I might make another video touching this painting up because I don't really add enough detail to the leaves. I add like the base to them and that's it. I'm trying to add more detail to the cliff here, but I'm very cautious because I didn't want to repeat the same mistake I did in the last one, in which I added too much detail. So I only added to the first one, which was a mistake. I should have added the detail to the second one. Like I said though, I think it would be a fun video to go back and do it again. I was trying to be inspired by Naruto Uzumaki's orange jacket here. I made the jacket a little bit too red though. It's like a very reddish orange. It's not like the neutral orange that Naruto wears, but it works. Also, if you are curious about this character, I have an entire like story and world built around the Dogo people, which is the character in the picture obviously. But one thing I was thinking about doing was making like a series of short comic strips, which I actually really want to do. So expect a video in the future of me making a comic strip, possibly of this dog dude. I'm nearing the end here. As you can see, I am nearly finished. Now I'm just inking in the character. I did not ink in the cliffs this time for fear that it would look ugly. I adjusted the camera because I realized my head was in the way, and it still is, and I apologize. But yeah, this is the end of the painting. Alright, I am done with both of them, and neither of them turned out how I wanted them to, so that's okay. I learned a lot about how the consistency of gouache is like key to painting it, because if you don't have the right consistency, you get weird lighter brush strokes and stuff. Also, mixing paint is a lot harder than mixing watercolor, because I feel like with watercolor, you just mix in a darker color and it gets darker, or you mix in more water and it gets lighter. With gouache, you have to like mess around with like yellows and blues and complementary colors and grays, and it's really weird to try and desaturate colors, and it's a process, to put it simply. Anyways, I thank you for joining me. If you have any tips for how I can improve or any comments, feel free to comment below. I love interacting with you guys. That's like probably my favorite part of YouTube, is interacting with people. So if you have any comments you're thinking about commenting, go ahead and comment them. Other than that, I hope you have a great day. Do something creative. Stay inspired. Go create something awesome. And I hope you have a great day. Peace.